That disappeared. You disappeared. Now you're back. Am I here?
You're there.
Oh my God. Do you hear a noise in the background?
Yeah, it's the Denver Broncos wishing they were good enough to be a consistent NFL franchise, but we'll get into that in a little bit.
We got to talk about a lot of different teams. This is Beyond Analytics, where we not only talk about the proper way to evaluate players and scout players, but you know what we do too is we scout teams and organizations, because we don't believe that successful organizations mishmash players into systems that they don't run. But I want to talk about team identity. And how teams which are successful, how teams are successful versus those that aren't. And it seems to me the teams that aren't are changing coaches all the time. And what you have is you ask a guy to come in and the staff to come in and work with players, because the general managing or the ownership doesn't realize they need to stick to they need to find an identity. Even if they get a new coach, they need to figure out what their identity is. So what you typically have with these bad organizations is you have they'll go and get another coach, and here they have players on the team that you're going to ask the coach that, because you didn't pay attention what system you run. So this coach you hired runs a completely different system than what the players he ended up getting. Then you tell me you got 4 years. I think if you're a general managing an organization, I don't care what it is, it's college or professional. If you're in the higher up, you got to decide what identity you're going to be. So if you have to get a new coach, at least you can fit them into the system. I want to just use this to discuss a successful transfer of coaching. I want to talk about the New England Patriots under Bill Parcells. He ran an I formation type of a power system when he came from the Giants. It was run heavy with the fullback in front, smash mouth football. But once he got Drew Bledsoe, who's a very intelligent quarterback, he went and he had a hybrid system. He still ran that power, but he also incorporated a West Coast along with an air Coryell, because he would get Drew Bledsoe to audible and, run his West Coast, type of passing, fake the run and, bootleg, that kind of thing. And then air Coryell, they would, because of his arm, they would do some go route stuff. So that's kind of what they were doing. And then Bill Belichick took over, who is a West Coast guy. So he was able, because they were already hybriding but they stayed with the power. And now we call it the power gap. It was power I back then. Offensive scheme. So they kept the smash mouth, but they, because Tom Brady was not a bombs away kind of guy. They have that short pass, pocket. So Bill Belichick kind of had to go back to what Parcells was running. But a lot of times you don't have coaches that can successfully do that. You know what I'm saying? Adapt. And it's understandable because they run, they're running certain systems. So what I see are teams that consistently make a run. But let's take the Buffalo Bills, for example, who's are contenders. They haven't made it to the Super Bowl yet. They kind of choke out, but they're consistently considered a Super Bowl contender because they're close. They're like really close. They scrapped that. They scrapped it all down, and even with Sean Payton, when he came to the Saints, they got rid of a lot. There was a big turnover. Either these teams have big turnovers, but teams that want to hold on, maybe the organization doesn't want to let go of certain players. then you're asking that coach to do stuff that he shouldn't do. So what I see is that you have to have identity as an organization, no matter if it's, I'm talking pros because I know more about that than college, what's going on in college, but I would assume the same, it's just universal. You have to have an identity and stick to that identity, and you need to bring in players that best work in that system. So I'll leave it. I'll let you go on and get your 2 cents on this. Can you hear me? Am I coming in good?
You are coming in perfectly fine.
Good. Good. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. So I want to talk about. You want to talk about the Bills. I think a better example of this is the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm just going to take those two and combine them into one. So what you see from teams like the Buffalo Bills, the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Philadelphia Eagles is they've been implementing and running the same system for years now. I mean, they're not turning over offensive coordinators left and right. They're not going through systems left and right.
Well, who's the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles?
Nick Sirianni, who came from.
And who did he take over for when he came in?
He took over for Doug Peterson.
And are they similar guys with the same similar? Okay, that's what I need to understand. Well, that's where you need to go. What happened in Philadelphia when the latest coach took over? What actually happened?
They put more of an importance on the offense and defensive lines. And
but what about player personnel that what player personnel did he get stuck with?
The Doug Peterson player personnel like you see in Jacksonville.
So how if they're two diametrically different systems, how was he able to convert all those players to his system? Or did he purge? This is the important.
He purged.
Okay, so I'm right about this idea of you'll have to purge it, and so they scrapped it out. Okay. That's extremely important to understand. Go ahead.
But I think the one thing that gets lost when it comes to identity is you have to have an identity from the ownership on down. Your ownership has to know what he wants to build his team. How do you want to build your team? That's a better example. If you're going to go get a front office that wants to go get West Coast zone run players and or a West Coast system, you need to go get players that fit that system. If you're going to be a spread offense, you need to go get players that fit that spread offense. If you're a power gap system, an I formation system, and you want to run the ball more like the Patriots, for example, back in the day, you need to go get players that fit that system. You can't be like a lot of the teams in the NFL, most notably the Denver Broncos, who get a player here that fit one system, get a player there that fits another system. You can't. That's not how you successfully build a team correctly. That's not how football works. The Philadelphia.
What happens if you're an organization that wants to be one thing one year, then the next year they want to be one other thing, then the following year they just can't make their mind up? What happens to those organizations?
Well, they look like they're always picking first, the top of the draft. They're always, down pity. I mean, they're always, down in the dumps every single year. And
then they got players that fit all kinds of different systems, and some coaches trying to figure out how to make it all work.
I think
because they don't want to get rid of those players.
I think what it does is it ruins the players and it ruins the coaches and it ruins your organization. I think, for example, I want to continue this topic about the teams that don't have an identity. I think Dalton Reisner and Noah Fant and Drew Lock are perfect examples of this because they fit a certain system, which was the West Coast zone run, Mike Munchak, Rich Scangarello system. Those players haven't been the same since year one. That they looked very, very good, and you had the resources and you had everything to build that. But again, John Elway got egotistical and got desperate and got impatient that I don't think he really understands how to build a team. I don't think he has the patience to do so.
Well, we're just one thing away. We're just one this away. We're just you'll see. We just need this one little. You'll see. We're
The one thing I like about the Chiefs, the Bills, and the Eagles is they stick to a system and they get players that fit that system on both sides of the football.
and develop and develop.
Exactly. Offense, defense, special teams, and they develop players. They get players that fit the system. They get players that they know they want to develop. I mean, when you if you're the Philadelphia Eagles, you're okay letting a 29-year-old, 30-year-old defensive lineman in Javon Hargrave and going and getting more up-and-coming players that could possibly be better than a Javon Hargrave, a Jordan Davis, a Jalen Carter. I mean, that defensive front in Philadelphia goes 3-4 deep. I mean, it's
there's an emphasis on that in that mindset of interior centric.
And yes, and I think that's something that I think a lot of teams are going back to. You're seeing the Pittsburgh Steelers doing that. You see the Baltimore Ravens doing that. Teams that have been doing it since the beginning of time, basically, that they did it in the 80s, 76. I mean, everything is predicated from the inside out. And I continue to do that. But again, if you don't have a system that predicates that inside out approach, you're not going to be successful. If you're going to go get a 4-3 defensive tackle and plug him into a 3-4 defense and expecting miracles to happen, that's not how this works. You need to get 3-4 player personnel on a defensive front. You need to get 4-3 player personnel in a 4-3 front. That's how it works. You can't go get a 4-3 defensive tackle and plug him into a 3-4 defense. We saw that with DJ Jones this past year. Where did he come from? A 4-3 front. He looks good, but again, I don't think he was the most consistent player that I saw in San Francisco because he had guys around him that elevated his game, that fit a certain system.
I want to talk about getting players. One thing the Patriots defensive coordinator did I just want to stick to it a little bit. They would stick to the 3-4 back in the early 2000s. They would stick to the 3-4, but they did draft and develop some guys so they could run nickels. So they would run. It wasn't a part of their 3-4, but they knew how to run a 4-3 during certain situations. And they had players that could play, but they only used them in certain situations because they weren't trying to be something they weren't. They just knew how to. And they coveted these players that they would bring in and develop them, but they would keep players that would be able to do situational football for them, like a couple of 4-3 type designs for certain situations. That's different than thinking I want to be this one year, I want to be that the next year. That's a complete. It goes still along the lines of your identity. You're sticking still to your identity, and you can kind of branch off. Like I was bringing up, the reason I bring up the Patriots at that time is that I'm just talking about what you can do. You stuck to your identity, but you're able to, because you got Drew Bledsoe, you can now go from that power I system, which is run heavy. You can now run some go routes because Drew Bledsoe could throw it, but you didn't. You weren't going to get into a completely different identity than what you still had. Your core people in your offense of line still running the power, so you didn't ask them to do become now all of a sudden West Coast. So they were able to introduce with the player they had wrinkles. They call it wrinkles. That's all I wanted to get into their playbook. But what we're talking about is we're talking about scouting and development and identity and how that translates into a playbook. You can't have your playbook ahead of putting your playbook ahead of your player personnel. Go ahead.
I agree with you with the playbook thing, but I think the most important thing, it translates into the organization. And here's why. You've been running the same system for years, aka the Kansas City Chiefs, the Buffalo Bills, the Philadelphia Eagles. And it's easy to me personally, if I've been running the same system for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, it's going to be easier for me to scout because I know the players that I want to draft and identify.
Well, you can develop because you know what players, because you're looking at the players.
Yeah, yes, and I think it's easier for the scouts and it's easier for the front office personnel that they understand, okay, we know what road we're going down because we've been going down the same road for years. You can change it up every once in a while to maybe, like you said, to sprinkle in something here and there. But if you're sticking down the same road, I believe it's going to be easier for the front office in general because you've built an identity for that long. It's easier to identify the players that you want. I saw in this draft is a perfect example of the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Philadelphia Eagles. They identified they knew what players they were going to draft, and then they identified it and they went after and got them. I think it's easier for those people in the front office, those organizations, because they've been running the same system for years. Now, if you're the Denver Broncos, it's a lot harder. You see the Marvin Mims pick, you see the Drew Sanders pick, and it's all just like it's a load of shit. It's a load of shit.
Explain why. Explain why that's a load of shit.
Because they've been going through systems for years. Now
now they have a new system with it. I'll be honest with you. I don't think they even know what they're running. I think they're going to try to, again, spin the wheel.
What did they lose? They lost that identity inside that organization. You got rid of Adam Peters. You got rid of Brian Sanders. You got rid of that scouting department. You brought in Elway.
You got rid of Pat Bowlen.
You got, well, that too, but they lost that identity that made the Denver Broncos in 2012, 13, 14, 15 so dominant. They lost that identity. Now they're all over the place. Oh, we're going to go get Vic Fangio. We're going to go get Pat Shermer. We're going to go get Rich Scangarello. We're going to go get Sean Payton. We're going to go get Nathaniel Hackett. All that clumped into one. You are a dysfunctional organization that has no identity.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. Let's see what we got here. Well, yeah, we flood concepts. So you said there was a poll by the general public. It identified the people who had the best draft, and they had Bears, Broncos, and the Eagles, and Eagles took it by a landslide. And I mean, what did people recognize? What did people recognize with the Eagles and why it worked out so well for them?
Well, what people realized is the Eagles are, to me, the most complete team in the NFL right now. They are. For all the credit we give Kansas City and all the credit they deserve, they do deserve it because they've been the same machine for 10, 11 years.
Well, I think that's the secret. I don't think it's Mahomes. I think that's the secret.
Absolutely. I mean, yes, they've been running the same machine ever since Andy Reid got to Kansas City. They purged that front office, and that's what the Denver Broncos need to do. But again, I don't think they'll ever do that because they have ownership that is so inept.
Yeah.
But the Eagles are the most complete team in the NFL, in my opinion. You know, people might disagree with that take, but I think, in my opinion, they continue to restock and replenish player personnel, and they know what they want. They go out, draft, and identify what they want, and they don't care what people think.
Well, they also build from the inside out.
Yes, that front office and ownership is in lockstep together. Hands down, that's the most important thing out of this whole thing is if you have an ownership in front office that is in lockstep, great things are going to happen. Good things are going to happen. If you have an ownership in a front office that is inept, like the Denver Broncos and even the Chicago Bears, you're going to look like what you have been, a laughingstock. So I think what people realize are the Eagles, in my opinion, I think are going to win the Super Bowl. From the moves I've seen outside of injuries are going to happen. But if they stay healthy and they continue to draft and develop their talent and do it the right way and continue the same scheme, there's no reason where I see a world where the Eagles do not win the Super Bowl this year.
Yeah. I want to talk just briefly say this again. I want to talk about Bill Parcells and Bill Walsh, the Power I system and then the West Coast system. Both head coaches were middle centric, interior centric. Parcells, without a doubt, and anybody knows, was interior centric with his power, both power offense and defensive lines. A lot of people don't realize is that when Walsh built the San Francisco 49ers that won those Super Bowls, he started with the lines. He started getting the best offensive and defensive lines, and he built that out, and finally got Joe Montana and put him in the center. It's kind of like what happened with Brady too. They were very centric, very interior centric. Brady gets installed in there, and nobody even touches this guy's uniform. You know what I'm saying? And the rest is history. I don't see Brady being successful on a team like the Denver Broncos you mentioned, a team where the offensive line is inconsistent. He's running around because he doesn't do very good running around, but he has to run. You know what I'm saying? And that's how you end up losing players, losing the playbook, losing the season. And then you go through another coach or whatever. So there's just some points I want to bring up. I think, like you said, that, and if you've been doing this for years, you're helping your scouting department. Everybody's in lockstep. There's no guessing. We know what we need. We see players they're starting to get up there. We need to start developing players we keep replenishing. Maybe we don't go to the Super Bowl every year, but we are in contention every year. In contention. I'm not, right now, it's like let's talk about the Chargers just really quick. To me, they're just one of those, it's a difference between being a contender and being happy to be there. If you're you're the Chargers, you're just happy to be there. Oh, we made it. We made our little appearance. We're Jacksonville. Oh, we made our little appearance. I think maybe the Bengals are starting to get it too about replenishing. They're very line centric. And they brought in a guy and he's what they're calling the guy that may make the 53s undrafted. And but they need him. He's a good solid piece, a good solid developmental piece that could replace one of their starters down the road. But there's organizations that can't think like that. That's why maybe when the Eagles, if they get some injuries, they're still okay. They're still able, I realize that injury to a quarterback could be kind of a real zinger, but I'm talking about like on the lines, And, we were talking about Cam Jurgens. You didn't like the fact that they were going to school him on being a guard, but what happens when one of the guards go out? You should have somebody that can fill in. That's the whole purpose of developing. That's the whole purpose of your draft, and your development, so that these people can step in, and they may not be top notch, but they can hold their own enough that you can still get the job done with your playbook.
Well said. I mean,
that should be in any organization, professional or collegiate. You're going to go out and get recruits or whatever, You said, you were just doing a film study on a high school kid that is part of that replenishment for Ohio State, right? You want to talk about that a little bit? You just did film study.
Was it the lineman or the D lineman? My apologies. I think it was
I thought it was offensive lineman.
Okay, yeah. Man, I forgot his name. My apologies. I'll if you want to put that in the description, if you can. I don't know if you can still or not. I'll put it in the comments section. I forgot time, but they got him from New Palestine High School. He's an offensive tackle. He's one of my top prospects coming out of high school. This guy fits what Ohio State wants to do. Ohio State, what they love in their tackles is those big physical mauling tackles. You saw what DeJuan Jones, he fell. He fell in the draft. I thought he was a very good player coming out.
Trevor Penning?
I'm sorry?
Trevor Penning?
Yes, Trevor Penning. Yes, offensive tackle out of New Palestine. No, Ian Moore. Ian Moore.
Oh, Ian Moore. Yeah, I'm sorry, Ian Moore. Yeah,
Sorry.
I know.
That was
We
my
go through. We have so many players that we're looking at.
I have so many people I have scouted. It's ridiculous.
Sorry. Well, I just threw that at you. So
No,
okay.
no, I know. And
Moore.
Trevor Penning is with the Saints.
Ian Moore. Ian Moore.
Imagine that. Yeah, Ian Moore. I really like him. Again, I think he would fit more of that. I think he would fit the Bill Belichick scheme. If he wants to come out, I don't know if Bill Belichick is still going to be there when he comes out, but a team that maybe the what's that team? The Ravens, the Pittsburgh Steelers, that they want to continue to replenish. I think Ian Moore would fit those schemes more. The Saints. If they, once Ryan Ramczyk starts to go downhill, maybe they can draft him to develop under Ryan Ramczyk. But I think Ian Moore is a good player. I think he still needs development. Obviously, no high school prospect is going to be perfect, but there are elements to his game where I do compare him to a Ryan Ramczyk. I say that in my video where he has some of those elements that I do like: great footwork, great hand placement. He does get sloppy, but again, that's a high school prospect. He's not a college prospect. He's still got a lot of development to do, but he's going to a good school in Ohio State. And he's going to a good coaching staff at Ohio State that's been running the same system since Urban Meyer and Luke, and ever since that. So, it should be a good pickup for Ohio State.
Can you talk about the Ed Oliver contract? While I'm remembering, you had something to say about the Ed Oliver contract.
Well, the Ed Oliver contract just continues to continues my point where these teams, I think, are realizing that they're paying a lot of money to these defensive tackles. I think Quinnen Williams is up next for a big contract. Ed Oliver, Aaron Donald, Javon Hargrave, DeForest Buckner, guys like that are getting paid a lot of money. I think a lot of teams are starting to realize that interior pressure up the middle is more important than
well,
and
yeah,
so
it makes it. You know what? You know how analytics is. Look at sacks. Well, wait a minute. Let's go beyond that. What created those sacks? And what do we see every time we watch the all 22 film when it comes to these teams these guys that are getting these sacks? Because I don't see Bruce Smith, but that Bruce Smith was a guy that he was an interior guy. He wasn't it. I mean, he could do it all. He was like the best interior guy. He was the best at, But what I'm saying,
Carl,
we don't have those guys. So you need that push up the middle that feeds those sacks.
I wouldn't say it's looking at the all 22. It's just common sense in football history.
Well, you see it in the all 22. You can see it with your own eyes.
Look at the teams that have won the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Chris Jones. The Chiefs tried to do this experiment, but then they finally realized, Chris Jones is better in the middle.
Yeah, I don't know what they were thinking doing that. Just are you kidding me?
And you have teams that do that try to make a certain adjustment that will revolutionize the NFL, but if it's just simple football. I mean, look at the Eagles. I mean, they lost Javon Hargrave, but they got Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter and Fletcher Cox and Mario Williams. Yeah. I mean, my goodness gracious, the Bills. You got Ed Oliver, Shy Tuttle, who I liked. They got Jordan Phillips there. I mean, it's like common sense.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying, for those that don't believe, you need to take the analytics, put that off to a side, play the film. Watch that interior. Watch it. Just watch it. This is what the good organizations, they're watching the film. And like you said, this goes all the way back to the beginning, back to when it was rugby, when the NFL was coming off of rugby football, all the way back that far. So this isn't anything new. I don't know why people want to get away from what works. And then on the flip side of the offensive line, and I want to talk about the all 22. We did so much Bronco stuff. We would watch the all 22 film and on their offensive line where they don't have anything in the interior. And what did we see time and time again on the film? if I am the opposing offensive coordinator playing against the Denver Broncos, I'm letting my quarterback know, don't worry about the edge. You'll always be able to step up in the pocket, because we saw that over and over and over. Quarterbacks stepping up into the pocket with ease. You want to eliminate that ease of stepping up in the pocket. If you're a really good organization, that's what you do. Am I correct in saying that?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I believe that too. Okay, so what have you been thinking about? Things you want to talk about?
I really don't have anything to talk about, really. I've just been, focused on trying to scout as many players as I can and just looking at the film. Most importantly, I've been kind of lazy at putting out film, but again, I just been.
I wouldn't call it lazy. You've been busy with.
Well, I could be doing better. I'm just going to be honest with myself. I could be doing better at putting out more film, but I'm trying to look at more and more high school prospects as we go into.
Yeah.
And I've been looking at 2024 prospects, so it's just a matter of time until I open up the floodgates and I release all of this film. So I really don't have a lot to talk about, really. I think what we've talked about today, I think, has been well said, in my opinion, because it needs to be said. When you talk about identity, when you talk about Ed Olivers of the world, when you talk about the importance of certain aspects of a football team in a front office, and like we said, an identity that all wraps in one, that if you have the identity and you've been running it, even if you're starting off, yeah, okay, you might take a dip, but again, the reward at the end could be something special where you are a dynasty, like the Pittsburgh Steelers in the day. You are
Well, we'll call it Kansas City right now. They're, in my opinion, they're a dynasty right now, and it's nothing special.
It's not because of Mahomes. It's not because of Mahomes. It's because they've been building this over time. They've been putting the parts to the machine for years, and they've been running the same system for years. They just continue to replenish talent after talent after talent after talent. They draft and develop. That's what they do.
Well, I'm just going to tell you, Chris Jones is no Bruce Smith. He's a great player, but he's no Bruce Smith. That's a generational player right there, Bruce Smith. It's before your time.
Yes.
That guy was absolutely special. I mean, you could put him edge, top-notch edge. You could put him right. One of the most iconic footage from the NFL is Bruce Smith pancaking Phil Simms, just fucking pancaking him, and he's coming right up. He's like playing nose guard or nose tackle. Excuse me. He's playing nose tackle, and he just comes off the nose. And this is an edge guy. He's coming right off a nose tackle and just totally pancakes him. So those kind of guys are just are rare. So what you need to do is is keep looking at who really works in the center, who works in the interior. I'd like to know who's up and coming in the interior, because I think, and also we were talking linebacking a lot last time. Coverage linebacking is becoming more and more apparent to those who have eyes and can see. That you need, again, special people with that too. Yeah, we want guys that can eliminate a 5+ yard game to a 1 or 2 yard game at best. But we want these guys to be able to cover. We want them to go sideline to sideline. So that's what we're looking for. I think this next coming NFL season, I'd like to highlight players from around the league when we see really special stuff. And if you could do some film work on, just, it doesn't have to be extensive. Just, look, this is what we're talking about. This is why this is just wrecking havoc on this offense here, or why this quarterback's able to do work the way he is. Because look at this interior. Look at, like, Tom Brady. I mean, how many times did we see this with a clean uniform? Not even not even a grass stain on it. And you wonder, he's so great. You say, well, okay, we'll put him on behind the, Denver Broncos or something, or whatever, whatever bad offensive line that's out there, you're not going to have that. When he played in the Super Bowl against the Giants, man, they were on him like white on rice. Even the Broncos, they were on him, and he was, pedestrian. A great quarterback, pedestrian, and that's what that's why you get those interior. We had Malik Jackson, we had Derek Wolfe, just not giving him that ability to step into the pocket. He had to scramble. He's not as good at scrambling. John Elway was like a master at putting a ball through a mail slot, scrambling. Although in the pocket he wasn't very accurate. He wasn't that accurate. So it's very few quarterbacks can really, and I could get into Lamar Jackson. That's a whole nother. I think that you really should try to get this guy to get rid of the ball sooner rather than later, and develop that pocket quarterback with him. But that's another subject for another day. But we're talking about wrecking the game, the playbook, and I think the interior is the key that unlocks that. That interior push up the middle. Then you can start, feeding those edge guys, and your safeties and your corners don't have to be, the top-notch Deion Sanders. They can be good, they can be good, solid guys that can look probably better than they really are, because the quarterback just doesn't have the time to go through the reads. He has to get rid of it a whole lot quicker than he'd like to. That helps the secondary out so much. I mean, as a secondary person, that's what you want. You want that disruption, because it just makes your job so much easier. I mean, we could talk about stats all day, but we're talking about how football actually works. Beyond the stats, beyond the analytics. Putting systems together, putting organizations together, getting organizations in the right mindset of being in the same lockstep of what it is you're trying to accomplish. And don't think you're something you're not. Don't think you're just this away. Don't think in terms of swinging for the fences. I call it swinging for the retreads. Think about building. Think about developing. Think about stability. To me, that's, if I'm an owner, that's what I'm going to really preach. Like we saw when they got Sean Payton with the Saints, and they went and bought out the other owners and say we just need one guy here and his lieutenant to direct this thing. So they get the scouts. They start. And I just want to say this really quick too. I know there's a lot of talk about fixing Russell Wilson. To me, that doesn't even remotely pique my interest. What I'm kind of curious about, and this isn't fan or being fan, it's just being curious, is how Josh McDaniels is going to fix Garoppolo or Jimmy G. And because I think that Jimmy G fits more the McDaniels system. I think is an interesting thing to watch. Nobody's talking about that, but also in Saints land, I'd like to see how Loomis in Ireland, the GM and his assistant there and in player personnel, help out what's his face out there, Carr and Gruden, and see how that helps those guys out with that Tampa, going back to that Gruden Tampa Bay smash mouth type offense, because the Saints will have the offensive line. Well, you said you wanted to talk about Broncos. I just wanted to say one thing too. Do you think that their offensive line coach is going to be asked to do West Coast stuff that he never did before? They're going to ask him to do West Coast stuff, do the stuff he does. Do you think they're going to ask him to miss mesh?
Yes.
That's what I think too. And I don't think it's going to go right. And I think he's going to end up being a scapegoat for just bad management.
Yeah, I don't like talking about the Broncos because they're just not worth my time.
I know, but I'm just trying to weigh it all out.
I completely understand, and I agree with everything you said.
They're dead to you.
Yeah, they're dead to me right now.
Yeah, they got a long way to go before
Correct.
They'll ever get it right. Yeah. All right. Is there anything else?
Nope. I think we hammered it home today, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm sorry I wasn't even a little bit better prepared. I wish I was. But
I had a good show.
Yeah. So, and we're on the off season too. Both collegiate and NFL. I mean, there's things we'll be able to talk about.
Yeah.
Certain games and stuff like that, how things work. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. I guess we'll just end it with that.
Okay.
Now
Well,
go out and get shit done.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
All right.
All
Talk
right.
to you later.
Take care.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Bye.